Welcome to True Crime with Strategic Eyes.
Strategic back again. What's going on, guys? Appreciate you guys for joining me again. I know 2 lives back to back. I apologize for that. You guys know what I had to do that required me to step away from the house. But definitely, guys, I appreciate you for coming back so we can finish out this endeavor where we're going to do a deep dive into the counselor of Madeline Sotos interview. But before we do that, in between the live that I did this morning and going to the dentist and now coming here to speak to you guys again on a Madeline Soto topic, we had a school shooting, another school shooting. Unfortunately, in Madison, Wisconsin. Now, everything is preliminary. The numbers are constantly changing. I'm going to go with the numbers that were said during the press conference. I listened to the press conference with the police chief as I was driving up from the dentist. During that press conference, this number did not come from the police chief's mouth. It came from somebody who was with the police chief who said it on the mic. They said 5 dead, 5 injured, for a total of 10 people affected by this gun violence. And I'm not sure if the shooter was a part of that total, but I do know that the shooter neutralized themselves. The responding officers, as described by the police chief, went into the school to stop the threat, but no officers discharged their weapons. The shooter took care of himself. As far as the age, the gender of the shooter, they have not released that yet, at least nothing that I've seen so far. And this Christian school, my understanding, catered to children from K to 12th grade for multiple churches in that geographical area. So I'm pretty sure that it affected a lot of people. And that just goes without being said anyway. So before we talk about the tragedy that is Madeline Soto, I want us to take a moment and reflect and just have a moment of silence for the young people, the children that lost their lives due to something we don't take seriously in America, guys. And, you know, I'm the guy that tells you guys that there's evil in the world. I tell you that there's some people who aren't mentally ill. They don't have a bad day. They're just plain evil, like biblical evil. I'm the guy who tells you that because I've stared evil in the face. I've looked at evil in its eye. And when you look at evil in the eye, when you stand across a table from a legitimately evil person, you will know it to be evil and not anything else. But when you have a child, I presume it's a child that's shooting up a school, most of the time it's mental illness, it's mental health. And we don't take that stuff seriously in America. People are quick to talk about guns. Oh, you got to get the guns, this, that, and third, whatever. That's not going to solve anything. You have to take the will of people to want to engage in that amount of violence. Otherwise, they'll just find another way of doing it. You know, they'll lock the doors and set the school on fire. They'll bring knives and stab as many people as they can. You have to take the bad out of the people. And sometimes when it's mental health, at least we can treat that if we catch it and if we take it seriously. So, guys, I'm going to take a quick second to just give a moment of silence to everybody who lost their life. And I encourage you to go and do your research and, you know, go check out a press conference and at least get the understanding of what happened, because only through understanding can we stop these things from happening in the future. All right, let's rest in peace to everybody who lost their life. And for the people who are fighting for their life, let's please give them the strength. God or whoever you believe in, whatever force you believe in, or even if it's just morality that you believe in, just pray to the energy, pray to the universe, pray to God, whatever you believe in, to give those people that positive energy to pull through and to not be victims so close to Christmas. Guys, I appreciate your time. You guys are amazing. Let's get back on topic. All right, so where we left off, we were at the 9-minute and 15-second mark. I have it right there on the screen behind me, so you can't see it. I want to go back just a little bit so we can approach this in proper context. I asked a couple of questions before we ended that live. I wanted to know if it's customary for a school therapist to want to get in contact with a therapist that is seeing a patient outside of the school. So you have your regular therapist that you see that you've contracted on your own or through your insurance, whatever, and you're seeing that therapist. Is it customary for a school therapist to say, you know what, can I have permission, parents, to talk to your child's therapist so that we can collaborate and we can basically share information and make sure that your child is getting the best treatment possible? Pretty much consensus was it's not customary because there are hoops that usually have to be overcome for that to happen. Hoops such as release forms, HIPAA release forms, and permissions, etc., for these two clinicians to talk to each other. I think that that's a big mistake. I think there should be more synergy in our medical services than there is. And you see that in law enforcement as well, where law enforcement branches don't talk to each other. Information is not readily, given out. If I need information from a school district for a child that's a victim, I have to get court subpoenas for them to release that stuff to me. But the Board of Education is a government agency and my police agency is a government agency. So why can't we talk to each other? Why can't we share that information? Same thing goes with corrections. Now, when it's sheriff's departments, it's a different animal because the sheriff department, he's in control of the patrol division. He's also in control of the corrections side. So I'm sure there's synergy there. But when you have agencies that have separate organizations running the jails and the police, you would think that the jails and the police have great synergy. That's just not the truth. And I think we could save lives if we find a way to have that better synergy between the clinician inside of the school and the clinician that's on the outside. The second question I ask is, do you have to be a psychiatrist to prescribe mental health medication? Meaning, could Jen Soto have taken Madeline to her pediatrician and gotten the medications that she's taken rather than a psychiatrist? And the reason why I'm asking that is because you guys understand how I feel about Jen Soto. Big shout out to everybody who's in the room. I know this is just an impromptu live. I just started the live. We got people who are going to be streaming in. But right now we do have 73 people watching and only 24 likes. 24 likes is like somebody who has 100 subscribers. You guys got to help me out here. Please hit that like button. Let's get those likes up. And big shout out to Manifesting My Coffee, who's now a Strategic Rise recruit. So please hit that like button. All right. What was I saying? Unbelievable. So, oh, Dr. Vona's in the building. What's happening? Thanks for coming through, showing I love. I lost my train of thought. I was really onto something. Ooh, that sucks. Oh, that's me with 100 subs. Ha 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 ha. It's okay. I'm excited to be back. All right, well, let's go check out your channel, see what you got going on, Dr. Vona. See what you're doing over there. All right. We appreciate you. So I forgot what I was saying. Maybe it'll come back to me. Whoever's in the chat, if you're listening, just remind me and then it'll jog my memory and I'll come back to it. But, medicine. Yes. So the question was, thank you so much, Juliana, medicine. Because you guys know I don't trust Jen Soto. I don't trust Jen Soto. That's my personal opinion. You could trust her if you want. I don't trust her. So when she says that that Maddie's seeing a therapist on the outside, when that school counselor is making complaints to her like, yo, your daughter is drawing these strange pictures, your daughter is writing crying and why me and all that stuff on the letters, we might have an issue here. Are you aware of this stuff? And Jenna's like, oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. She has a therapist on the outside. Don't worry about it. I don't know if I believe that Maddie had a therapist. So that's the question. That's why I had that question. Do you have to get those prescriptions through a psychiatrist? Because to me, if she could get it through a pediatrician, I could see Jen taking her to a pediatrician, and we all know there are doctors out there that'll do anything you want them to do, describing the symptoms, getting Maddie prescribed with those medications without Maddie having seen an actual therapist. Now, is it most likely that Jen Soto took her daughter to a therapist? I have no evidence. I'll have to say it's most likely she did. But I don't trust her. So until I hear for a fact that she went to Therapist of Kissimmee office or pediatric therapy, I'm making up names, Dr. Hans Johnson Boulevard on Kissimmee Road, until I hear about a person that I can literally corroborate or organization I can corroborate exists. I don't trust Jen Soto. I just don't trust her. I'm sorry. So now, let's keep going. I want to start back up. I'm going to bring it back just a little bit. Let's bring it back to the 7-minute mark. And let's do it.
Questions that I have to ask, and I just want to make sure that I touched on them. Okay, did you ever see, I know we talked about like the anxiety and the panic attacks, and you said she never, mentioned anything about being depressed or being suicidal or anything. Did you ever see her exhibit any of those behaviors, like that she is depressed, or that did you notice anything about her that was out of the ordinary other than the things we've already talked about?
It seemed more so to be very up and down.
Okay.
Like she would have those heightened moments of the panic and the crying, and just she would go from that to just like shutting down.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I want to just address something that I see in the chat because I think it's very relevant to what we're talking about here. I think the problem when we have these conversations is that we live in a country that is made up of 50 individual countries inside of one. We all have the same values, we all have the same constitution, but we have 50 different countries inside of one, and they all have their own regulation. And so in some states, pharmacists can give you a flu shot and give you vaccines. In some states, pharmacists can't even touch a needle. In some states, nurse practitioners can do minor surgeries. In some states, no nurse practitioner can do anything like that. The point of me saying that is that I have different people in the chat saying different things. So some people saying, no, only a psychiatrist can prescribe, ADHD medication. And I got Paula Messa in the chat, member, appreciate you for being a member, who says, hey, Strategic, I'm a mom of a teenage daughter who has ADD. Her pediatrician was able to prescribe her ADD medication. So it's like, it depends on what state you're in. And so I think that I probably won't be able to get a straight answer on this, because the answers I'll get is what people's experiences is in their own jurisdictions. And their jurisdictions is going to change. Their policies are going to vary depending on what state and what jurisdiction you're in. Anyway, let's keep going. I think that settles it, but let's keep going.
After the panic, and then if you talked her through it a little bit, like there's one specific instance in my statement that she could not say what was making her feel that way. And so I asked her to draw it out, and she was able to do that.
Okay.
And then she kind of put on there just like a lot of scribbles, which to her, she said that meant just like the chaos of all the feelings and thoughts that she's having that make her feel overwhelmed. And then words she wrote. So things along the lines of like, why, or crying and things like that. And after that happened, I reached out that she wasn't at school for a couple days. So
Wow. Why and crying? We went over this in a previous live, but why and crying? Crazy. Big shout out to Hal 9000 who's in the building. Hal 9000 been with me for a while. Appreciate you, Hal, for coming through, showing that love. Let's keep going. So she reached out to Jen Soto. They redacted Jen's name, reached out to Jen Soto, and then she said that Maddie didn't come to school for a couple of days. Let's keep going.
I was like concerned of, okay, we went from this to now being out. What is happening? I reached out.
Right. So that's the same thing we said in the previous live that we did this morning. I reach out to you. I'm the therapist. I reach out to Jen Soto. I tell you, your daughter is drawing these very disturbing pictures with accompanied by words such as why and crying. She is reaching out for help right now. And then your response is you take her out of school for a couple of days. Not a day. My kids are sick all the time. The most they've ever been out of school is one day when they're sick. Not a day. You take her out of school for days. Most people with common sense would think to themselves, something's wrong. Why is it that her absence coincides with me giving you this bombshell information that there's some serious emotional issues with your daughter? Make it make sense. Let's keep going.
And at that point, he's been struggling lately, a lot of tears and feelings, but that she was seeing a weekly therapist.
Okay.
So she supposedly had someone that she was seeing weekly about all of this.
Okay.
And also stated at that point she hadn't been at school because she was sick and she was going to take her to the doctor that day. And she mentioned seeing the drawing that from our conversation, and I, encouraged her to share that with mom, so she did. And she said
Wait,
that
I
she
gotta go back
appreciated
because
that.
she's talking fast, and I gotta like digest what she's saying because there's some important stuff being said right now. Big shout out to Rose Valdez, who's now a Strategic Eyes recruit. Appreciate you for joining the family. Let's go back a little bit. I really got to digest this. Let's keep going.
What was making her feel that way? And so I asked her to draw it out, and she was able to do that.
Okay.
And then she kind of put on there just like a lot of scribbles, which to her, she said that meant just like the chaos of all the feelings.
Think about that. That's the scribbles. Everything had a meaning to her. It's almost like a classical piece. Like I love classical music. I don't listen to rap and R&B. Even R&B is nice music, but I don't listen to rap, R&B, rock, pop, whatever you want. I don't listen to that crap. I listen to classical music. And one reason why I enjoy classical so much is that every single thing on that sheet of paper has a value, has a meaning. Even silence has a value. It's called a rest. There's no computers, there's no electronics, there's no synthesized beats or anything like that. Everything on that sheet music is what was intended by the composer. The same thing like Maddie's drawing. Everything that she put on that paper meant something to her. Even the scribbles meant something to her. The scribbles meant the confusion and the chaos. And then if you didn't get that, even though she explained it to you, she even wrote it out to you. Why? Why? Crying. She gave you the visual and the verbal cues as to what's going on with her. Let's keep going. And this was presented to Jen Soto. And what did Jen Soto? Forget about the counselor. The ultimate vanguard of keeping Maddie safe lies with her mother. This information was relayed to the mother, Jennifer Lizette Soto. And what did she do with that information, ladies and gentlemen? Well, I think it's safe to say she did nothing with it. Let's keep going.
And thoughts that she's having that make her feel overwhelmed. And then words she wrote, so things along the lines of like why or crying and things like that. And after that happened, I reached out that she wasn't at school for a couple days, so I was like concerned of, okay, we went from this to now being out, what is happening? I reached out, and at that point he's been struggling lately, a lot of tears and feelings, but that she was seeing a weekly therapist.
Okay.
So she supposedly had.
So I just don't believe, guys. I don't believe it. Not what this therapist is saying. No, I don't have nothing. I'm talking about Jen Soto. I don't believe that Maddie was seeing a weekly therapist. I could be totally and wholly wrong about this. I'm not even telling you it's a theory of mine. I'm not resting anything on this statement. I'm just telling you what my spirit is telling me. You are talking to my soul right now. I'm telling you what my spirit is saying. My spirit is saying, I don't believe it. I don't believe that Madeline Soto, some of you guys know about victimology more than me, because you were a victim. I'd like to say that everybody in my audience who was a victim of SA is a warrior now. So I say you were a victim. But unfortunately, we have some people who are still victims. They haven't put the work in for them to become survivors, and then that even extra work, because you could just stay at survivor and God bless you, but that even extra work to become a warrior where you now start fighting for other people who are victims. We do have some people who are still victims. They have not put the work in. They need more time. Hopefully they will get to that space, that special space where they can move forward with power from that ordeal that they had to unfortunately be subjected to. But for those of you, regardless of what level you are on, you know more than me because you've been there. But other than folks like that, and other than therapists who specifically specialize in victims of this specific type of trauma, because if you're a therapist that deal with everything under the sun, you're not going to get as many looks as what I get, because all I do is deal with victims of SA. So I say all of that to say I know a little bit about victims, survivors, and warriors. I paid a mortgage based off my dealings with victims, survivors, and warriors. And I find it hard to believe. It is not impossible that this could be the case, but I find it hard to believe that little Madeline Soto was seeing a licensed and fully educated therapist weekly for who knows how long, weekly. And there's not one instance in that weekly meeting where that therapist is alone with Madeline Soto that nothing came out that made that therapist believe that this victim, this little girl, was being abused. I find that hard to believe. I can readily accept that this school counselor was not able to see these things in the 6 meetings that she had with them. Maybe those 6 meetings happened over the span of 2 years. I don't know. I believe it happened over the span of a year. I think it was the January prior that she started meeting Madeline Soto, which means that Madeline Soto passed away, unfortunately, in February. So it was pretty much a year. So she had 6 meetings with Madeline in the span of a year. In my first video, I was a little tougher. I'll give her more grace now and say, okay, 6 meetings over the span of a year. Okay, that's not crazy a lot. But to tell me that, to believe Jen Soto when she says that Madeline Soto is seeing a therapist on a weekly basis. In between those therapy sessions, Stephen Stearns is violating this child. Probably the night before the therapy session, the night after the therapy session. He's violating this child. And there's not one instance in this weekly meeting that Madeline says, you kind of touched me some way I didn't like being touched. It's possible. If somebody else told me it, I'd probably be more inclined to believe it. But because I'm hearing this third party hearsay from this therapist relaying what she allegedly heard Jen Soto tell her, well, ladies and gentlemen, I don't believe it. Anyway, let's keep going.
Someone that she was seeing weekly about all of this.
Okay.
And also stated at that point she hadn't been at school because she was sick and she was going to take her to the doctor that day. And she mentioned seeing the drawing that from our conversation, and I, encouraged her to share that with mom, so she did. And she said that she appreciated that and that helped her in that day, which at the end of that conversation with her, she was able to calm down and feel better. But at that point, that's when it got a little concerning, to the point that I reached out to mom just to say, hey, what's going on? And found out, okay, she at least has supposedly weekly therapy sessions outside of school.
And
so even the therapist says supposedly because the therapist doesn't believe her. Even the therapist was not convinced. Otherwise, she would not say supposedly. Even the therapist was not convinced that Jen Soto was actually taking Madeline Soto weekly to see a therapist. You could tell when somebody's in therapy. If she's seeing a therapist weekly, why is a school counselor giving her tips on how to cope? Giving her, what do they call them? Tools? Exercises? Would not be something that not only would she have gotten from her weekly therapist, but would be actively practicing on a regular basis with her weekly therapist? Wouldn't there be tons of journaling involved with Madeline Soto? Because therapists like to make people journal. It's a big part of therapy. No matter what you got going on, they want you to journal. I got therapists in the room. Tell me if I'm lying. You guys love telling people, why don't you start a journal? Start journaling. If we all go to therapy, the world would be filled with novels and books and bibliographies and biographies and all that stuff. It appears to me from how she describes it, it's like when Madeline is coming to her, that's like the first time Madeline is ever seen a therapist. She's not describing Madeline as though she is a child that is accustomed to therapy. She's describing Madeline like their visits is the only instances where this little girl is actually exposed to therapy. I could be wrong, but this is what my intuition is telling me. It's what I'm feeling, man. Let's keep going.
So these things you said that would trigger these panic attacks or these anxiety-inducing issues were because of issues that were going on with them, correct? Like where she would argue with.
It seemed to be a combination of bringing that from home, the arguments and the feeling like she's taking on those feelings at home of I don't feel safe in terms of not necessarily physically safe, but emotionally safe, that at me and causing me to feel overstimulated. And then I come to school and it's loud and there's lots of kids and I'm overstimulated again.
But it wasn't. It's usually.
And things she said along the lines of my room's not clean, or you forget to do this, or you don't do that. So to me, that's like things about it was never.
Especially at that age, with the teenage age, you know. Okay, so how about her grades or her behavior? Have you noticed any shift in her grades or the behavior that she would normally exhibit?
Grades have seemed stable. We've been working on in our check-ins kind of coming up with strategies because of her ADHD and in terms of getting her missing work in to bring up the grades. And she seemed to be making improvements with that since around December when she started reporting things are better at home, at school. Our last check-in was February 6th, I believe. And at that point, she was very happy that day. I called her down just to do our check-in and she said things are going really well. She feels really happy. Things are better at school. And that was the last time we had a check-in.
And that was because of the strategy.
All right, so people are asking if like what kind of medical insurance that they have. You know, of course, people can have all types of medical insurance, but obviously I would have to say that if Jen is on disability, as it was proclaimed that she is, she would most likely be on some government type insurance. She would have government funded insurance, which means that most likely this stuff would be covered. You know, somebody would take her insurance. I'm not saying she could go to any therapist. Not all therapists take Medicaid or Medicare or whatever it is that they have out there. But somebody would take it, and it would not be something she would have to pay for. So, like somebody else said in the chat, there's no excuse. Medical coverage was covered by us. I'm not saying that in a negative way. Some people need help. I'm not one of those people, you know, oh, my tax dollars is helping people. No, there's a time when your tax dollars help me. Your tax dollars help me, help pay my rent, help put food in my belly. But of course, I was raised not to abuse systems. As soon as me and my family were able to get ourselves together, get our jobs, there's nothing but up. But I'm definitely not one of those people. But certainly, it appears that she was on some type of government. She would be on some type of government assistance, health care, because of her income and the fact that she's getting disability. There's no excuse for Madeline to not get the help that she deserves. Let's keep going.
Strategies that you had kind of given her to help her.
Yes, she had been getting some of that work in. Her teachers are working with her because she has the IEP, and she said that she used the strategies at home to talk about the when we're calm, let's talk about what it's like when we're not calm and how that makes us feel.
Gotcha.
And she says she was able to successfully do that.
Good. That's excellent. Okay. I know we talked a lot about, like, you know, kind of just briefly mentioned with her. And I know you've only known her for a short period of time, but you haven't noticed a dramatic shift from when you first met her to now that's negative. Like, have you?
Correct. When this first came up, my first thoughts are, oh, things have been better. So I'm like,
so it's surprising to you, it sounds like.
How did...
Now, I heard that this whole notion that things were getting better is not true. Now, this is all I heard. So take it with a grain of salt. My understanding is that Maddie's grades were still terrible, and she was still failing. That's what I heard. Like I'm hearing from like the teachers, and I got to go find exactly where I heard it. So just take it as with a grain of salt now. But I remember reading it that her grades were still bad. So like I don't understand this notion. I'm getting mixed verbiage on the topic because it's like, Some people saying, well, things started getting better for her in what, a month? So in a month and a half, the time between December and January, things just got so better with her. I think what they need to say, I think Sweet as Taboo has it right. I think what they're trying to say is her attitude probably got better. Maybe she was a little happier. But it's not like it was a 360 transformation where she now was getting straight A's or even C's or B's. No, she still was getting terrible grades. You know, she still was screaming at her friends. She still was being, you know, acting a little bit like a brat. But we gave her a pass for that because she's under so much immense trauma from what this guy is doing to her. So if they're talking about her attitude, that's one thing. But these folks keep trying to sell it like there was like this 360 transformation. It was not. It was not. And that matters to me. Maybe it doesn't matter to some of you guys, but it matters to me. But let's keep going. Because you know what? The reason why it matters to me is because it's a cop-out. Because then it's like, well, we don't have to try so hard because look, everything got better. Oh, you know, we didn't miss anything because things got better. So how are we supposed to know that anything was wrong? Because, you know, her grades got better, everything got better. No, things didn't get better. Maybe she had a little less pressure on her spiritually and physically because this guy wasn't trying to jump on her every freaking night. So yeah, of course her mood would lighten just a tad bit because she's not dealing with that kind of adult pressure on a little child. But life was not peachy for her just because this guy left, because we now know that this guy kept coming back. He kept coming back. We also can't get a straight story on how many times Stephen Stearns returned to the residence after he so-called moved in with his parents. His parents said it was like, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 times he went over there. Jen is like, oh, he came over like 3 times. And then she later said, well, he was here almost every week. And he still got his packages delivered here, so he'd come in and get his packages too. So which one is it? Was he there 3 or 4 times between December and January, which is pretty much once a week anyway, right? Or was he there every couple of days, and when he came, he stayed a couple of days, which is what Jen eventually settled on. She eventually settled on, he's freaking still almost here, and when he does come, he spends a couple of days, and we were working on moving him back in here so that we could raise Madeline as sister wives. I'm telling you, in a sexless relationship, we were going to raise Madeline together as friends, as cohabiting, co-parenting, sexless relationship. That's what Jen Sotos said out her mouth. I'm paraphrasing, but that's what she said. So it went from he moved out in December because I didn't like him anymore and he wasn't a good partner. That's what Jen said. 2, he's visiting 3 or 4 times, and you know, Christmas time came and I still want him to come around and blah, 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 blah. 2, well, he's here almost every week. 2, he's still getting his packages here, so he comes up like almost every other day and he stays a couple of days. To lastly, I didn't want to be with him anymore, but I loved how he treated Madeline, so I wanted him to be with me in a friendship type relationship where we could live together and raise Madeline together. That was her final verdict on her relationship with Stephen Stearns. That's why those details matter to me, because life was not peachy for Madeline Soto. Life was not peachy. What break did she get from Stephen Stearns? I just gave you the breakdown. Tell me at what point she had a break from him. So maybe she smiled a little bit, just a little bit, on the nights that he actually stayed in his little man cave, his boy cave in Northport. Maybe on those nights, the next day when she had a full night's rest because he wasn't keeping her up all night abusing her, maybe the next day she was rested and she wasn't crabby and she smiled a little bit. But that doesn't mean that she was out of danger. And these folks keep talking like, well, I thought everything was great afterwards, so, you know, there's nothing to worry about anymore. No, you still dropped the ball. Let's keep going.
How did we get to this point?
Yes.
Okay, so there's nothing that would stand out to you that would make you think that something was on like that things were declining at home. You actually thought things were actually getting better
Right.
based on what she was telling you.
From the information that I had from her,
Okay.
without at that point having spoken to friends or anything I had, to me the perception was things are getting better.
And what was the last date that you met with her?
February 6th.
You know, I don't get bothered by pictures like, and that's an issue I had when I first started the true crime channel. We went in a true crime direction. You know, I'm desensitized to this stuff because this is what I do for a living, you know? And so I think it was a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow because, you know, we have a crowd filled with survivors. We have a crowd of very empathetic people. You know, there's a lot of soccer moms that watch. Like, 90% of you guys aren't law enforcement, sex crimes detectives that deal with this stuff every single day. So when you hear a guy coming on YouTube talking the way that I talk with the vigor and the passion and using anatomical terms and not censoring myself as I did in the beginning of the channel, it could be off-putting for some people. And I get that and I understand. That's why I would say, hey, listen, I'm a unique cup of tea. You know, if I'm for you, take a sip. If not, then it's no hard feelings. I say all of that supposition, just to say this picture is touching me, man. When I look at this picture, I think about what I know about this case, and it hurts. It breaks my heart looking at this little girl behind me. To you guys, she's behind me. To me, she's in front of me, and I'm looking at this beautiful little baby. This is a baby I'm looking at, and I know, from what I know from this case and what I believe, what is happening to this beautiful child. It breaks my heart. This is why I tell you folks that there's no redeeming quality for people like Stephen Stearns. This is why I tell you that there should be no such thing as a possibility of life without the possibility of parole for Stearns. We need to just remove these people from this earthly plane. And I understand that that's what the Kissimmee or Osceola County district attorney is currently trying to do. County attorney's trying to do. They're seeking the death penalty. Thank you. God bless them for seeking that. But we need to get this done. He needs to be found guilty. We need to have a system where we're not spending the next 10 years and the next $5 million him fighting his death penalty conviction. And now 15 years from now, when I'm long retired and my kids are now making kids of their own, finally we hear about Stephen Stearns being put in under with the needle. There has to be, when you have this amount of evidence in a case like this, there has to be an expedited process to taking this man off this planet. Believe me, I'm not a big fan of expediting justice, but we have the videos of this man doing unholy things to this child. He needs to be removed from our earthly plane. There's no other justice that we can have besides the ending the destruction of Stephen Stearns. Let's keep going. I'm sorry.
And that was the date that she was like, hey, things are getting better. We're using these strategies at home and all of that. Got it. Okay.
We were supposed to have our next session to follow up this
And I just want to say this one last thing. I have to say it. I don't condone violence against anybody. I'm talking about state-sponsored, adjudicated justice, not vigilantism or anything like that. I'm talking about policies for our government to punish, adjudicate, and end these predators. That's what I'm talking about. Not anybody in a county jail or a state jail putting their hands on this man. I'm talking about the government doing their job to protect our children from monsters like this and to serve as a deterrent so that the next pedophile like this man who has these thoughts thinks to himself, I better keep those thoughts in my brain because if I act on those thoughts, I'm going to be destroyed. Let's keep going.
week, and obviously I haven't been able to do that.
Okay. Is there anything else you can think of that I have not asked you that you want to relay to me while I have you in here?
To me, the only things that are sticking are the comments of he is weird and I don't like him. And I wish I had more information to say where that came from, but when I asked that, all I got was he eats our food, he hangs out in the common areas.
Okay. All right. Do you swear and affirm everything you told me is true to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So the time.
All right, so that's the end of that. Heaven asked if I would give up the death penalty on him if in exchange basically for Jen Soto. No, I would not. No, I would not. I would not. There's nothing on this planet. I don't care if that meant Jen Soto would be able to do life in prison with him. I would rather Jen Soto walk free than spare this man life so that he could continue breathing this earth. I would much rather Jen Soto go free than make a deal to allow Stephen Stearns to live. I'm sorry. That's a hard no for me. And I hope I would never have to make, I hope that that's not a choice we would ever have to make as a society. I hope that if there's enough evidence to go after Jen Soto, that we go after Jen Soto, which we know they're not going to. At least that's my position. Based off of the decisions that the Osceola County DA has made, I don't think that they're going to go after Jen Soto. But I could be wrong. But I'd wish that if they had enough, that they'd do the right thing and they'd go after her. And if they don't, then they don't, because we don't want people railroaded that we don't have evidence for. But I would never, ever, ever, if Stephen Stearns has the goods on Madeline, on Jen, I'm not making a deal with him. And let me digress. All right, let's be honest here. Let's be honest. If Stephen Stearns could prove that Jen participated in the acts with Madeline, then I would relent and give him life in exchange for her getting life as well too. But if Jen, which it does not appear that she did not participate in the X offense against Madeline and the ending of Madeline, then her just knowing is not enough for me to take him off the hook for the death penalty. The only way I would take him off the hook for the death penalty is if he had concrete evidence that Jen participated in the essaying and the unaliving of Maddie. Unless he has concrete evidence of that, I'm not taking death off the table with him. It's either they both doing life or he's getting the death penalty. I'm not going to take death off the table so that Jen could do 10 years in prison or 15 years in prison. Nah, it's either they both going to do life without the possibility of parole together for all eternity, or he's got to get the death penalty, and I guess Jen is going to walk for whatever she did know. Big shout out to Helen Chester, who's now a member. Strategic Guys Recruit, appreciate you for joining up. You are amazing. Great. Wow. All right, so we did that. That was cool. I appreciate you guys for joining me. You guys are great. I do have to go and salt. So this was a nice little short live, 42 minutes. Our average is usually an hour and 45 minutes, but most of our shows go almost to 3 hours, really. So it's always nice to be able to come in and come out. It is what it is. I did see, what is the name of this show again? I'm so sorry. I just did a reaction to one of them, and I'm a big fan of theirs too, which is ridiculous that I would forget the name of their show. Which one is it? Come on. Explore With Us. So there's a new Explore With Us that just came out with a mentally ill young lady who killed her mother in Ellenville, New York. And the tragedy of that is that the daughter, this is my son right there, means I gotta go. What's up, buddy? Some more soda? Okay, I'm gonna get off now and I'm gonna go get the soda, okay? Tell mommy I'll be up in 5 minutes, all right? Okay. Okay, I got you. I'm going to go extra fast. All right, 2 minutes. I got extra fast, guys. I said 5 minutes. He said extra fast, so that means 2 minutes. Anyway, very quickly, the murderer's sister was actually killed by the Long Island guy. That Long Island serial killer guy that they recently arrested. Her sister is one of his victims, and she is mentally ill, and she ends up killing her mother. Now, it's a very interesting story. It's lots of body-worn camera. It's really interesting to look at. My issue is that the officers are brand new and wholly and totally screwed everything up. Now, don't get me wrong. The case is not messed up because the lady's mentally ill, and she admitted 1,000 times that she did it. She had bloody clothes on. Her panties were bloody because she took her pants off while she was stabbing her mother to death, and so her mother's blood is all over her panties. She's dead to rights. but I wanted to go over it to show you guys all the mistakes that the officers made. And it's in Ellenville, New York. I used to spend time over there when I was working for state corrections and I was doing investigations because they have jails out in that region. Very, very poor town. Even the police department makes pennies. Like they make like $30,000, $40,000. They make pennies. And it's a very, very poor town filled with drugs and poverty, etc. And I really wanted to go through it and like walk you guys through it and show you guys all the missteps. Anyway, guys, I gotta get out of here. I gotta go get soda and I gotta salt the front of the house because it snowed and then it's raining and now it's turning to ice. I see you guys on the next one. Make sure you become a member of the Strategic Eyes Show. Make sure you become a member of the Patreon. We're dropping exclusive videos on the Patreon all the time. Videos, and they're rated R videos. The videos that I can't show here was I will get community standard striked on my channel. I get taken off of YouTube. Blood and gore, but I don't just put it up just to shock you. We're not that type of channel. There's a reason why that stuff is up there. This is the adult version of the Strategic Eyes Show is on the Patreon where I'm not moderated like on YouTube. So make sure you join the Patreon as well. Hit the like button, guys. Support the channel. I'll see you guys on the next one. Strategic is out of here. Let me include an outro. Peace.